Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of A Real Point of View, where we try to come to you as film critics on the internet to discuss films, film subject matter, and things that are happening at the time in our lives that deal with movies and media. So, um, I am your host, Greg Morgan, and I'm here with my co-host, Mr. Stephen C., and he's the critic who doesn't pick a bad movie. And I am, of course, your real movie guy here talking about film. So today's subject, Steve, is one that we kind of grew up with in a way in our childhood, pretty much, into modern day enthusiasm, I guess, this kind of phenomenon that is comic book movies and superheroes. So that's what we're going to discuss today, the state of comic book superheroes. Uh, so what do you think, Steve? All these movies have come out recently and perked our interest. And it's kind of funny to me because I remember years ago in the 80s and the 90s when superhero movies came out like Superman. We remember, or well, you don't probably don't remember this, but Batman was on television. And probably in the 80s and 90s when Batman was actually on screen with the different Batman movies that came out. I wonder why, here's posing an early question. I wonder why Superman back then really didn't take as well as it does now. And superheroes back then, we didn't really have a lot of Marvel superheroes coming out there. So let me start this way. What do we have now? We have what's called universes, right? We have the DC universe and the Marvel universe. So I'm posing a question out there. What does that mean? What are universes? What is that? What's your take on that?
Um, well, for one, Marvel does a really good job of placing all of their characters and all of their story arcs around the what I would more call the real world. And like they're in New York. When they talk about New York City, you have Daredevil, you have Luke Cage, Jessica Jones. They're all in Hell's Kitchen in New York City. But you have Spider-Man, who's all over New York City. You have heroes based in Chicago. You have the Avengers that are based in New York, but are also based in LA, West and East Coast. Um, Wakanda is located within Africa. So even though they created this kind of mythical Atlantis like city, it's still in Africa. It's still in a place that we really know of. When you do the DC universe, it's a little bit more fantasy oriented. You have Gotham City, you have Metropolis, which are like Chicago and New York City, but they're not called that. You have Atlantis under the sea, which is, I mean, purely based in mythology of the world. And then it goes to space, and from there, Themyscira, which is an island off of Greece. But the the different universes, they have their own storylines, they have their own arcs, they have their own purposes. And the universe we're going through now with the Marvel is so extensive, and they've done so much to keep it very, very coordinated and very not necessarily linear, but on a straight and narrow path. And honestly, the heroes in DC, as weird as this to as weird as this is to say, have like Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman. You have a logical reality about what they can and can't do. With the Marvel universe, it's more of a scientific what they can and can't do. Everybody's there's so many more super soldiers. There's so many more normal people that are turning into through science these heroes and or villains, the metahumans, the inhumans, and stuff like that. So in DC, they just exist like that. It's not necessarily science that drives them unless you're talking about specific villains. It's mostly just they exist for whatever reason or another.
So to just add a little bit to that, we have Wonder Woman, who is an Amazon woman, and that's just how they are, and that's part of their nature and part of their aesthetic. Whereas we have like Bruce Banner in the Marvel universe, where its gamma rays have caused a metabolic change in him to where he becomes the Hulk. It was not part of his nature, not his true nature.
Right.
Now, ironically, with that being said, we took it look at Logan, the Wolverine. Now he just was initially, and he and his brother, they just were this mutant essence, and yet obviously it was enhanced later on for him with the I always say it wrong. What was the chemical compound? I want to say
Oh, the adamantium.
adamantium. Thank you. And so obviously that is a little different. But let's go back to universe for a second. Why call it a universe? What do you think was the reasoning behind that? Is that to get everybody to understand that all of this is interrelated in some way with each other? I mean, obviously, with the Avengers, you have a group of these extraordinary people and or beings coming together to form this union. Why not leave it at that? I mean, we have the Avengers in Marvel, we have the X-Men in Marvel. Why not, or even the Inhumans in Marvel? Why not stay in that mode? Why do we have to have a universe? What's the concept, the universal concept? Is it to, in your mind, to just unite everything and bring everything into our vision, our scope, to help us focus on more?
Well, I think it is that, but when you think of the term universe, you think all encompassing, you think everything. So, in order to do a Marvel Cinematic Universe, you have to encompass what you like. You start with something small, but you can't do like just the Avengers. If you said the Avengers and you said Marvel Universe, it's going to feel a little bit smaller than when you use the term universe. So that's why you expand it out and you encompass everything in this grouping and you try to touch every single little detail that you can in order to make a huge collective story, which branches off here, branches off there, and but they still have such an interconnecting path.
Mm-hmm.
With the DC universe, it's exactly the same way. It's a little bit on a smaller scale right now, but with the Justice League movie, they're wanting to explore really broadening that. With we've seen Steppenwolf, we know of Apocalypse and Apocalypse, yeah, Apocalypse, the planet Apocalypse and Darkseid will be coming later on, pending the success of this movie, I would believe. But now also you have Suicide Squad. So you've gone Superman, you've gone Batman, which this being Ben Affleck instead of Christian Bale. You've given Wonder Woman her own collective. You've given Suicide Squad their own collective. And now you can slowly start to bring it together while adding new additions, which you can do later on.
So I guess another way to say this is we're using universe as opposed to epic.
So say that again.
We're using universe as opposed to epic.
Yes, we're using universe instead of like we're using universe because it encompasses so much that it's Marvel's X-Men, Marvel's Avengers, Marvel's Inhumans, Marvel's Defenders, but they all fall under that Marvel collective because it's Marvel's Guardian of the Galaxy. Cannot leave that one out. But it all follows, and with the Guardians of the Galaxy, it continues to branch further out because we're going into space. We're doing more off of just planet Earth. But the one good thing that they're doing is even though you have Guardians of the Galaxy, which is taking it off planet Earth, and a little bit of that in the Avengers style, you're still Thor. You're still keeping it close to home with the Inhumans, and you're keeping it close to home with the Defenders, with Daredevil, Jessica Jones, Luke Cage, and Iron Fist. So you're able to keep it based in a real setting. This is New York. This is Hell's Kitchen. This is, when you think about New York City, you can point at this area, but also you're getting that fantasy aspect of them going into space with the Guardians of the Galaxy and venturing to the far reaches of where our mind can go.
So let me ask you this. If that being said, why are there so many heroes if they have these extraordinary powers and are able to, so far they haven't really been defeated as we've seen. They've had trouble fighting, but not defeated. And especially with a creature like the Hulk, who, in my opinion, is probably Marvel's answer to DC's Superman. With that kind of a hero base, why do you need so many? Why do we need a universe? I mean, with these superpowers or magical powers or whatever, physicality, all that brain wave, whatever it is, why do we need so many heroes? Is it to possibly bring in so many other people, i.e. diverse heroes, diversity? Is it to encompass the imaginations of everybody in a way, and they can relate to all these different heroes in a form and fashion? You had mentioned Hell's Kitchen so much early on today, and I guess if I look at those Hell's Kitchen heroes, the only one that seems to be relatively invincible is Luke Cage. But even Daredevil's abilities and Jessica Jones' abilities, as well as the Iron Fist abilities, is it because we need so many because there's just so much crime out there?
Well, one, yes. Two, you really answered your own question with the diversity talk. The reason comic books have continued to expand and have continued to sell is not everybody Iron Man is their hero. Not everybody feels that Captain America is their hero. Not everybody feels that Black Widow is their hero. And they want someone to latch onto, someone to really focus on that really represents them. Luke Cage, for example, yes, he seems invincible. Yes, his skin is tough, but he is still a man. He still carries the emotional weight of, one, what he does, and two, everyday life. So you can see in moments, especially in the TV show Luke Cage, especially in the trailers for the Defenders, you can see it at certain points where he is, even though he has all this power, he is really very human and very emotional and very representative of his diversity. Jessica Jones was a superhero and who has fallen out of, in the comics, she had her powers, not her powers taken away, but she had her ability to be a superhero taken away because she was tricked by someone else into committing a crime. And when she did that, she forsook her ability to be a hero or to really be seen in a very caring light. So it takes a lot of people who are dealing with struggles, who are dealing with making bad choices and trying to correct their lives. They view her that way. Iron Fist, a man that is lost in his travels and comes back trying to find out who he is again. Same person that he was, but everybody still views him that way. So he's trying to change. Daredevil. I mean, I really don't know what more to say. He's trying to do the whole I want to help people. I want to save people in my life as well as in Daredevil's life. In Matt Murdock's life, I want to be a lawyer. I want to represent the downtrodden, and I want to be their hero. But in Daredevil, I want to stop crime. I want to save Hell's Kitchen, and I still want to be the hero for the downtrodden. But I don't want, a true representation to the Daredevil. Um, and then it expounds from there. Doctor Strange gets in a car wreck, loses the ability to use his hands, which is what he's most known for being a doctor. And he literally tries to he takes any opportunity he can to try to get that power back in his hands to be able to use them again. But he ends up becoming more than just a human being on his journeys and travels, and realizes it's not just his hands that he can use to help people, that he can use to help himself.
So the running
And then there's Tony Stark. And then there's Tony Stark, who will never learn.
so the running thing that I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt that
No, you're fine.
movement. So the running thing that I'm understanding from you so far is to help someone. The nature of all of these heroes is to, in some form or fashion, be of service and help someone, and utilizing the powers that they were given to do that. And the struggle, as you alluded to, they're all human. All the people you mentioned are human. And with that being the primary essence of their emotion. So it's really them utilizing not just their abilities, but being compassionate. They're emotionally involved. They're not just there to be a hero like on Mount Olympus and then you just come down and you just save the day. There's a lot of baggage, a lot of emotional, for lack of a better way of saying it, a lot of emotional giving, a lot of emotional
torture.
Yeah, it's
torment.
Yeah, it's very interesting. So let's go over to DC for a minute. So obviously the two major powers in the film industry right now are Marvel and DC. I'm not saying that there aren't other heroes.
Oh no. Let's stop that. The major power is Marvel. DC is playing catch up.
Exactly. And why is that? I mean, obviously relatability is very, very important, obviously. It has been, as you alluded to, when we were little kids reading the comic books, and it's no different now. The only difference now is now we can see and visualize these things in motion, in movement, in real time and ability. It doesn't just jump off the page now. It's its own entity now, and so our imaginations are being fed now even more so because we have the ability now cinematically, there we go, cinematically to have you present this stuff on film. But why isn't DC just as vibrant and viable as Marvel has been? Now I get, in my mind, my own mind, storylines are very, very important. How you can project that storyline and it be, again, draw you in as a person, as a viewer, as a patron of the film and or character. Why isn't that DC is not in that realm? I remember growing up really liking DC. I collected comic books early part of my life up until probably my late teens, and having both DC and Marvel. And yet, I'll be honest with you, I'm more of a Marvel guy and driven more toward Marvel too, probably for all those reasons that you mentioned earlier. But at the same time, what was wrong with DC? There were some really good characters and really good quote unquote superheroes that, I related to over there too. But yet the only one that truly resonates with me is Batman. So with that being said, what is it about the other heroes? I mean, and we can even compare heroes to heroes, but and I want to do that a little bit. But what is it about DC that's just not people just aren't getting?
Um, one thing is the representation of the characters.
Expound on that.
And
What do you mean?
okay, the when we think of Batman, when we think of Batman in the comics, when we think even Adam West Batman, based in that world's Batman. The comic book Batman that we got a lot of the time is what Adam West's Batman was portraying. The when we turned and got the Tim Burton, the Michael Keaton, Jack Nicholson, Danny DeVito, the Batman and Batman Returns, that was the representation in the comics.
Right, because that was really was the deal.
Yeah, that was the Batman we were getting. Batman Forever and Batman and Robin were far reaches. Batman Forever not being as much of a far reach as what we were getting in the comics. Batman and Robin tried to go too star power, too much for the actors and not for the story. And then we get a rebirth of Batman with Batman Big Dark Knight and Batman Dark Rises, the Christopher Nolan with Christian Bale, with Liam Neeson playing Ra's al Ghul, and then of course the late Heath Ledger playing a fabulous Joker, in some people's opinions the best Joker that has been on screen. They all were representing the comics really well. They were representing the story. You had all this star power in these movies, but you weren't paying attention to the stars. You were paying attention to the characters that they were portraying. And everybody did a fabulous job with that. With Superman, everybody loves the Christopher Reeves Superman. Everybody loved Christopher Reeves because Christopher Reeves seemed like Superman. He was that natural, wholesome, farm in Kansas, good morals, a good conscience. Did everything he was. The Henry Cavill Superman that we've gotten has been very
stoic,
overacted, in my opinion. And then we got Superman Returns, which I feel the story is what didn't help that Superman. I feel like the story that they tried to put out there just did not live up to the expectations they were trying to do. Visually, it was a good-looking movie. Story-wise,
yeah, aesthetically, he looked like Superman should look and Clark Kent should look. Yeah,
right. Superman has always had this real problem of infinite powers. It was ridiculous in the 50s and 60s where they would write powers for him to have on the fly, and it was something different in every comic. With Batman, you knew what Batman brought to the table. With Wonder Woman, you knew what Wonder Woman brought. Aquaman, Green Lantern, even Green Lantern's fantastical ring, which could literally produce anything that his mind came up with. You had a grounds of believability in, okay, this is what this does. No matter what, it doesn't do anything outside of what this does. With Superman, for a long time, he was doing things that were outside of himself. And there was no set pattern. It was always just, well, Superman's going to win because he's Superman. Like, that's just what it is. And that's why a lot of people fell in love with Superman. A lot of people fell in love later with the TV show Smallville and Lois and Clark, because it wasn't Superman, it was about Clark Kent. So we got to fall in love with him. And then we got to see him become the Superman. And we got to feel all of our impressions of him transfer through that character. The movies really haven't done that. Christopher Reeves is the only one that really had that really connection with the audience, because we saw him in Superman 1, Superman 2, Superman 3, Superman 4. We got to see him collectively. Henry Cavill, we saw him in the movie, and then we saw him in Justice League, or Batman versus Superman, and we know how I feel about that movie.
I don't think there were a lot of people who saw that movie, whether you were a comic book fan or not, and you were just going out there just like everybody else just to see something different.
Right.
Came out of that film real happy with either Batman or Superman. The only person that, not just me and you and other people have voiced their opinion, saying really the best part of that whole movie, and sadly was a very minimal existence in the film as far as time is concerned, was Wonder Woman. It made us excited about Wonder Woman getting her own
Mm-hmm.
space. And
Also, one thing about oh, right, right. Also, one thing is the animated series that have come out when I was a kid. Batman the animated series, um, Justice League Unlimited, and all that stuff. It played to the superheroes, and it only really played to the superheroes. Now, the Batman the animated series, you had a mixture of Bruce Wayne and Batman, but it was a darker, grim, more detective style Batman in the TV shows. Justice League, you knew what it was. It was the Justice League. It was the heroes. It wasn't really anybody else. But the reason Wonder Woman, in my opinion, has gone over so well, and Karen said she was expecting it to be a knockout of the park, and she felt that it wasn't, in her opinion. You and I both thought it was way above par, and it definitely, gave credence for people to go see the Justice League movie that's going to be coming out. But absence makes the heart grow fonder. We hadn't seen a live Wonder Woman since the 60s. Can't remember exactly which. So we had never seen someone take up the role, put on the lasso, wear the tiara, put on the frilly skirt.
yeah, that was
And there was a nostalgia factor that also popularized Wonder Woman for right now. I feel like the movie did a great job of portraying her own character. Also, the fact that she was naive to the world, we got to connect with her a little bit more.
sure.
Which is the thing I feel like we're having a problem with Henry Cavill. The reason Ben Affleck is going to go over okay as Batman, I mean, Ben Affleck's a good actor. I would never say that he's not. When I see Ben Affleck up there, I'm like, oh, it's Ben Affleck. I don't normally see the characters that he's playing. I see Ben Affleck.
Mm-hmm.
But because of Christian Bale and the Chris Nolan Batmans are still fresh in our mind, we get that Bruce Wayne. We've adopted Bruce Wayne. We've been through it with Bruce Wayne, so we look at him in a different light that we're just not looking at Henry Cavill in.
Or Ben Affleck. Yeah.
So, and it'll expound from there, but I feel like there's not enough connection to the story in Marvel has been laid from day one. They said, okay, I was just talking to a buddy of mine about this because his complaint was that Marvel has flooded the market on superheroes, that we are getting an overabundance of superheroes, and that we're honestly getting a little too much. In which I told him, I was like, yes, but that's one, it's our fault. Two, it's our want to have more superheroes because Marvel came out and said, okay, we're doing this. We're going 1, 2, 3, 4. We're doing, we've got Iron Man, we've got the Hulk movie with Edward Norton, we've got Captain America, we've got Thor. This is what we're doing. We're going to run with these, and then we're going to go from there. So we get introductions to new characters as we're going. Iron Man laying the foundation, Hulk coming next, or vice versa, whichever way it worked out. And they said, this is successful. People have enjoyed what they're doing. Not to mention, they are not making these movies for comic book people. They're making these movies so everyone can enjoy what we as comic book people have always enjoyed.
Mm-hmm.
So it's bringing fresh eyes to the franchise, and it's bringing a different look than what the comics have been doing for a period of time, even though they're still staying pretty true to source material. And okay, now these four things have worked. All right, now we're going to go 5, 6, 7, 8. And then 5, 6, 7, 8 comes out. Success. Okay. 9, 10, 11, and 12. And we're going to sprinkle a little extra in. Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., the Defenders with Daredevil coming first, Jessica Jones coming next. And they're also putting it on different, it's not all movies, it's TV shows, it's episodic stuff that you can take in daily. Their partnership with Netflix is really good because you can get an entire story like you would in a graphic novel. You get your entire story real quick and you got to wait for what's next. So it's kind of like the comics where you're waiting a week. With DC, everything's been so broken up and they're so far behind, and they didn't take the time to lay groundwork, versus they're throwing a lot of stuff at you automatically, and they're like, we're going to throw it at the wall, it's going to stick no matter what, and a lot of it's not sticking.
Yeah, and that's how it feels. It feels like they're throwing it out there to not just compete, but as you stated, catch up. And to me, that's where they're making a mistake. I think they too have to develop the characters even more so. All of a sudden, we're getting the Justice League only after seeing Batman and Superman fighting each other, so there's no cohesion. And then we have Wonder Woman who's coming out of that fray. And yet, when the Justice League comes out, they're throwing Flash at us, they're throwing Aquaman at us. And Aquaman truly has no developmental story. Now, the Flash, on the other hand, and the Arrow, on the other hand, who are all part of the Justice League, they too have had the television series to help that situation along. But so very, very different.
I wanted to interject that real quick. One thing that Marvel is doing correctly that DC is definitely not up to snuff with and is not doing correctly. You have a recast Flash. You have, if they were going to do an Arrow, you would have a recast Arrow. They're doing things that don't, like when you watch Jessica Jones, when you watch Daredevil, they talk about that has to do with the Marvel Universe, they're talking about the movies. They're referring to the movies.
Right.
Characters, Nick Fury, Samuel L. Jackson has showed up in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Right.
They've crossed things over very meticulously and very well, where you have, even though they're still kind of keeping them separate from each other.
Right.
Because
you're still trying to develop
the problem,
develop those things,
right?
But because of the crossover, that's helping that development and helping us believe in what we were talking about earlier, an actual true universe.
Mm-hmm. And they're staying in a very straight line. This is the goal. This is the end goal. It doesn't matter how we get there as long as we get there. And it has to make sense. As long as those stay in a straight line, you have an end goal, make it make sense. Go back and reread. Your continuous story is going to make sense, and it's always going to connect in the way you think it should. Most of the time. With Supergirl, the Superman that they're going to have on the show Supergirl is not Henry Cavill.
Right.
So we're never going to associate Supergirl with him and Superman as being the same show. Flash, the Flash that's going to be in the Justice League, we're never going to associate unless they somehow twist it some way with that TV show. Arrow, if they don't use Stephen Amell as Green Arrow in a Justice League movie that they do down the line, the shows are never going to connect. So you're getting a broken mess versus we're staying in a straight line. We're making it make sense, and we have an end goal. And they're not doing that.
Now, here's the irony with what you said, and it's very interesting with Spider-Man. What a lot of people don't realize, and maybe some of our listeners who are watching may not realize, is the rights to Spider-Man were with Sony and not with Disney, Marvel. And so being able to bring Spider-Man back into the fold has made all the difference, we hope, in the long term. But as you stated a moment ago, it's the you use a better word than I was going to use, but the reestablishment of Spider-Man again. This is our fourth Spider-Man. But we have to understand, and I want people to understand, that those other three Spider-Man weren't truly part of the universe. Now, with the Spider-Man that they have now, they're going to develop him into this Spider-Man for the Marvel Universe so that there is cohesion. And the reason why they even brought, ironically, Spider-Man Homecoming, it was a homecoming of him from where he was in Sony to where he is now, co-owned by Sony and Disney. So now we'll have that cohesion that we want to have with this particular character, like we've had with a lot of the other characters. And even though you mentioned Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., well, obviously the head agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. was actually in the Avenger movies, in the Iron Man movies. And so he is the same character, no different. Maybe, well, he is a little different, but the same character nevertheless, and playing that same personage. So that crossover pattern is working really, really well for Marvel. And until DC does something comparable, I don't see how they're going to catch up anytime soon. Because again, it's the cohesion that's helping us as the viewer to truly understand what the storyline is, and the storyline in a broader sense, as opposed to a chopped up, inconsistent storyline that they're trying to invoke upon us with, i.e., Justice League. You know, I don't know. I've seen a lot of the trailers for the Justice League. I'm not totally impressed, really. And maybe that's a little biased because I'm a Marvel guy mostly. But growing up, I wasn't. And so having the ability to see and read both sides, the comic book realms, I was looking forward to a much more cohesive, that's I guess my word today, much more cohesive DC. And that hasn't happened. And maybe they should have developed the characters like they did with Wonder Woman prior to us getting the DC universe in the Justice League. You alluded to the TV series in Netflix. Well, yeah, we're going to have the Defenders soon, or really soon. And they developed each of the characters first to give us an idea of who they were. And ever present saying and ever mentioning that they're all in Hell's Kitchen. So, i.e., that one's part of New York City. So that was a good idea. And as the Defenders become more of a cohesive unit, I know that they're going to reestablish them in some of the Universal movies that are going to be coming out, i.e., you had mentioned the Guardians of the Galaxy, for example, having Avengers on their ship, all to also protect the universe, because now it's not just the cities in trouble. It's not just planet Earth. It's the universe that's in trouble now. So that in itself is that broader story that they're trying to develop and bring to fruition for us to be able to watch. And I like the way that they're doing it, where there's a conflict, not just a conflict between the forces that be in the evil forces that be in the superheroes and the people on Earth, but there's angst in the ranks. Even the Avengers aren't getting along. And that's just true human nature. We don't always like what somebody else says or does. And even if you're going toward the same noble cause, everyone has their own opinion as to how to get there. And we see that early on with Iron Man and Captain America. How's this separation going to be able to be molded back together for that one cause or many causes. And that's what we want to see in Civil War. We want to see the breakup. We're okay with that because we know that's how life kind of is. And then we also want to bring things together, I think, because that's kind of how life is. Once you get all that stuff ironed out and figured out, then we got to work our way to being oneness. So maybe that's part of the excitement of the Marvel universe as opposed to the DC universe, which oneness, other than saying you have the Justice League and they're going to be together, they haven't really established one way or the other. And, you know, last I saw with Batman and Superman, they weren't liking each other much.
I'm going to have to talk about this movie. Batman versus Superman is a cluster.
Yeah, totally. I agree.
It's a cluster. It's a cluster in writing. It's a cluster in what they're trying to do with the story. It's in cluster with the information that's shoved in your face. The death of Superman, spoiler alert if you haven't seen Justice League, or you haven't read comic books ever. The death of Superman is probably one of the most shockingly panned comic experiences that anyone's ever had.
Mm-hmm.
It was just always known that Superman was unbeatable. His power was limitless. That's just what it was. And it was for so many years. Eventually you just become immune to struggle when somebody is invincible for so long, and then you don't buy in. It was a huge selling point for DC Comics when Superman died, and comics after that, because of the representation that was going to come later. Of course, eventually they did bring him back, and the way they did it was really good. But you had years and years building up to this moment, and then it happened, and it was such an unbelievable thing. In Batman versus Superman, it's literally like, why is this in the movie? Why are we doing this now? Why are we in Superman's first meeting? Why is Batman any way, shape, form, or fashion torn up about this with a guy he was literally trying to pummel the head in not 15 minutes ago? Why does it mean anything? Why does it make a difference? Why is Batman's mom and Superman's mom having the same name cause for Batman with this guy that he's poured literally so much intense, undeserved hatred into? Batman's character doesn't make sense. The scene doesn't make sense. The writing doesn't make sense. The only thing that makes sense in the movie is Wonder Woman.
Totally. Period.
There's just so many things wrong with what they tried to do. And even Wonder Woman's character, even though it does make sense, is a stretch for presentation's sake. We've always seen Wonder Woman as a strong, outgoing, ready to fight character in the comics, period. But she's never been willing immediately to help. She's more been willing to fight everyone than help someone upon first meeting.
Well, here's the slight difference, though. Let's look back at the developmental film Wonder Woman and the history of her understanding. That probably was the case in during World War I and World War II. But we have to also understand that at the latter part of that film, it was present day, and Batman and Robin, it might have been better if it was just Batman and Robin. Batman versus Superman was present day. So her ideology and her knowledge now is that much more attuned to the environment that she's in. Whereas, as you said earlier, she was very naive and didn't know the world. Now she knows the world.
But that's what we should have gotten first.
Yeah, I agree.
So in the context of when the movie comes out, it's no sense.
Yeah, yeah.
But I mean, there's scenes in the movie. I would always suggest anybody going to see a movie. I'm not, well, if you want to go see the movie, go see the movie. If you want to see what we're talking about, if you want to see what their representation of Batman versus Superman was, go see it. I'm not going to suggest it, but
Okay, I have one thing to say. Even in Harry Cavill's,
I can't say it. Like it's kind of a failure as a movie. The casting is wrong, top to bottom. Casting's wrong, writing's wrong, situationally it's wrong, contextually it's wrong. The most important thing about it and the best thing about it is a character we see for maybe all of 25 total minutes of movie runtime.
I don't even think she was in it that long. 15 maybe.
Yeah.
And the fight scene and earlier at the whatever ball they were at, where Batman actually sees her for the first time. But I think Harry Cavill would have been fine if he could have used his power.
Henry, it's Henry Cavill.
I apologize. Henry Cavill would have been fine if his abilities in the other Superman movies were present. They just weren't present in Superman versus Batman because there's just no way. I don't care what you do or say, that here all these other aliens and or countrymen will say from Superman's home, he's defeating him. There's no way Batman was going to defeat Superman. It just doesn't happen unless he found a way truly to shoot Batman with kryptonite bullets. And that's the other thing that we weren't talking about. Superman, with all those superpowers and all that great ability, did have a flaw. He is not unbeatable. You just have to have the right thing. And then for him, it's kryptonite. All through our childhood, kryptonite is going to mess up Superman. If it don't kill him, it'll weaken him so much that he's vulnerable. But even with the vulnerable state of the kryptonite, does that mean that it made everything about him vulnerable? Because it seems to me, even if you still shoot him with a bullet, he still should be able to take that bullet. But the powers of kryptonite are not totally laid out for us totally. But I still think that the movie made no sense. Batman, it should have never even happened. There was no reason for it. And you know, I'm like you. After seeing Christian Bale, who I thought was the best Batman, and the second best to me was I don't know why I can't think of his name now. Beetlejuice. What is his name? Steve. What was the Batman? It was what's his name from Gung Ho and Beetlejuice? What is his name?
No, Michael Keaton.
Thank you. Whew. Those are two best Batmans to me.
I think Michael Keaton honestly is a better Batman.
I think Michael Keaton to me was a little too dark. Because even in his regular persona as Bruce Wayne, he was still kind of dark. The one saving grace for Christian Bale's Batman, although he was dark, when he was in public, he wasn't dark.
Mm-hmm.
He played the ruse that he needed to play to keep all suspicions off of him. But even in his dealings with Alfred and other people who knew he was Batman, he wasn't dark. He may have been focused, but he wasn't dark. And Michael Keaton was dark. A little too dark. But other than that, I loved him as Batman. I thought he was stellar as Batman, especially the different Batmans that they had. Clooney should have never played Batman. Val Kilmer was dark also, probably a little too dark, and just wasn't as convincing as Michael Keaton. That's all. Because
I think Val Kilmer was.
I just think the circumstance in the Batman where Val Kilmer played Batman, the storyline wasn't quite as good either.
I think Val Kilmer was the brooding Batman. He was very, very brooding. He was very, very in himself.
Yeah,
and
that
it doesn't show up very well on screen.
Yeah,
it doesn't show up very well on screen, but I feel like it was at least done fairly well.
Yeah,
not as good as Michael Keaton or Christian Bale, but fairly well.
Yeah, that's the only thing. I think the best representation of Batman as a whole came from Keaton and Bale so far. Now I'm Ben Affleck in the big body armor suit thingies. It's not working for me still. That was almost like a patchwork Batman kind of thing. And here's another one of my angst. I'm gonna kind of change subject slightly here. I'm having a difficulty, and I think it's a little confusing for some audiences. Not confusing in the sense of true confusion, but more of a blissful confusion about characters. So here we have another defector, this time from DC, from Marvel to DC, and Ben Affleck. Ben Affleck played Daredevil. Now, I'm saying it was a great Daredevil.
No. Ben Affleck was just in a movie that they tried to make about Daredevil.
My point is, here's a guy playing a Marvel character and not in DC. And then the same thing with Chris Evans. Chris Evans was Johnny Storm in the original Fantastic Four movies. And they made at least 2 movies. I don't know, maybe 3, but at least 2 movies. The basic movie, and I don't know, the Silver Surfer movie, which I was rather disappointed in the Silver Surfer, by the way. But he played Johnny Storm, and now he's Captain America in the same universe. And Ryan Reynolds is another one, jumping ship. You know, he's Marvel one time, and now he's Green Lantern another time. He was Deadpool, which is Marvel. You know, I just think that's a little confusing, and it's almost mixing the universes, and they're not. So people out there who are looking at these characters, these actors playing these parts, look at who they're playing, and know where they stand. That's my little mini rant there. I know I'm my sister's brother, right?
I think it's I think it's more finding your niche. Yes, it can be confusing with actors jumping back and forth between characters and doing stuff like that. Of course, Daredevil is before the real birth of the Marvel Cinematic Universe that we know of. The Green Lantern movie was supposed to be a prelude into this DC universe, but honestly, the movie just set the DC universe back years. The Fantastic Four movies were actually supposed to be alone in themselves. They weren't supposed to have crossover representation. That was maybe going to come down the line, but we're still in the before the DC universe, or before the Marvel Cinematic Universe that we know of.
Not debating that, but I like Chris Evans as an actor. It's just that you're Johnny Storm, and now you're Captain America. It's the same face. It's the same guy.
You see him as Johnny Storm and Captain America. I only see him as Captain America because,
and I get that. I get that
because I don't know. I feel the better fit for the actor of the representation of the character. I feel like when I see Chris Evans as Captain America, I don't ever think about Johnny Storm. I don't ever think about those two Fantastic Four movies, one of which should have never been made, and one of which, honestly, if you didn't make it, wouldn't have been an issue. Um,
The original movie was probably the better of all three.
the first movie was good. The second movie was
Not so good.
not good.
And the new
We're not even going to talk about it.
Or it wasn't even really a movie. It was more of a cinematic nightmare.
But with Ryan Reynolds, when we see all of his done career as an actor, makes such an immense amount of sense compared to seeing Ryan Reynolds as Green Lantern. Seeing Ryan Reynolds as Hal Jordan versus seeing Ryan Reynolds as Deadpool is, again, when I see Ryan Reynolds, I see Deadpool. And honestly, I saw Deadpool before I ever even saw, him possibly playing Green Lantern before that ever happened, because it's just his acting style and his character just makes you believe that he would do a great job playing Deadpool. And look what happened. He played the character to a T. I mean, literally, he stole the suit from set to take it places. And he showed up at the Suicide Squad premiere as Deadpool in character. That is things that Deadpool does when we sit there and think about the comics. Ben Affleck should never play a superhero. I think Ben Affleck has had
this is his third one.
He had his one opportunity and it did not go over well. I feel like the movie was better than everybody said it was, but the movie wasn't that good. I know that sounds like a real oxymoron when you say it, but like, I can sit down and watch that movie. The Fantastic Four movie we got, a year ago or 2 years ago, however it was, I cannot sit down and watch that movie. That movie is bad.
Yeah.
At least when they made Daredevil, it had something.
It's pretty horrible.
The Green Lantern movie, they just got too far from the source material and they went a little bit too far-fetched. Even though we are talking about comics, and when you say far-fetched, it's kind of a toss-up on what you're trying to do.
Yeah, I think we understand that, not taking it so close to the vest there. But
right.
Okay, so what do you think DC needs to do to just be viable? Forget the catching up part. That's not going to happen. But be viable enough to make us interested again.
Wonder Woman was a good start, in my opinion. Getting a female superhero, their own movie, and running with that. If Justice League goes well, what I feel that DC needs to do is, before they go into another Justice League movie, they need to take a branching effect as they're going across the board. They need to take their time and really hone a development through characters. If we've all seen the trailers, I know what happens in the comics. It's been talked about through newsletters and stuff of Henry Cavill being seen in the black and silver Superman suit and blah, 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 blah. If Superman is the one that comes back to life, we need, for Superman, everybody loves a story of overcoming adversity. We need to see him struggle in his next movie. He can't be an overpowering guy. We need to connect with him. So we need to see more of Clark Kent and the Lois Lane aspect. Also, we need him to struggle as Superman and overcoming. If Ben Affleck is going to continue Batman, do nothing, literally do nothing with the Suicide Squad or Jared Leto's Joker, in my opinion. A lot of people like Jared Leto's Joker. I am not one of those people. I feel like Jared Leto's Joker is a guy trying to play crazy instead of a guy legitimately being crazy. Stay away from the Suicide Squad. If you want to make another Suicide Squad movie, go for it. But let it be what it is. Own what the Suicide Squad represents and what kind of movie it is. It is ridiculous. It is literally a bunch of villains, a bunch of people who are not right in the head and are willing to do, terrible things to anybody to get the bomb off the back of their neck taken off and their sentence done. Like, let's not get too extravagant. Get rid of Jared Leto's Joker. Have Batman focus on something concrete, but not the past. Not focusing on his parents' death, not doing anything like that. I feel like they need to find a way to integrate this Flash into the Flash TV show and let it go. Let it do a thing like that.
They'd have to recast because the TV show is really successful, first of all.
Well,
and
you could
with the Flash that they have for the movie and for the Justice League, he is what's the word? Until we see the film, he doesn't really have an identity per se. And so if they were to fuse the two together, it would make more sense the guy playing Barry on the TV show to be part of the Justice League. That would have made more sense.
Well, the one thing they can get away with is they've done aspects with the Flashpoint type of atmosphere. You can actually get those two in the same place at the same time playing the Flash and have an interconnecting story. In my opinion, the guy that's in the movie needs to leave and the guy that's in the TV show needs to move into the movie franchise.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Or if the guy in the movie franchise comes off as a good-looking Flash, if you put him in the TV show and he does an amazing job, you can kill off the TV Flash and you can keep him. But you have to continue to run him through the TV show and into the movies. Yeah. Keep doing what you're doing with Wonder Woman. The only thing I would have an issue with Wonder Woman, I've seen the trailer for the Justice League movie. There is a scene in it that looks like a straight copy and paste from the trailer of the Wonder Woman movie. Do not have her have the exact same fights. Let it be different. Her character has to develop as it's going. You can't see the same thing over and over.
And to me, that would just be a desperate move, wouldn't it?
It would be bad.
Yeah.
Aquaman, put him in a movie with somebody else. Put him in with Wonder Woman. Put him in with Batman. Put him in with Superman or Green Arrow or Flash. Have him be like the Hulk. The Hulk had his own movie with Edward Norton, but the Hulk has now been a part of everybody else's setup, everybody else's movie. He's been a part of the Avengers movies. He's going to now be a part of the Thor movie. Let that be the stepping stone for Aquaman. That way, Aquaman has never been a popular character. He has his fans. Because Aquaman as a whole has never been the same tier as Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, even Green Lantern, even Flash. Aquaman has never been that high. I feel like Momoa could do a great job in changing the aesthetic of Aquaman and making it very different and very likable. But again, you need to build that somewhere else. I don't feel like an underwater Aquaman movie is going to be explosive.
Okay, here's the thing, and I was going to bring this up too. In comparison, one of the cool things about in the imagination and creativity is you create something once and then you kind of expound on it and or add to it and or you're not necessarily reinventing the wheel. So I was thinking about the superheroes on the Marvel side and the superheroes on the DC side and what similarities they have. And you bring up a very good point with Aquaman. Aquaman is very limited. He's always been limited in his scope. he's never been a like like um, like Blade, a daywalker. You know, the one cool thing about Blade's character, which is also a Marvel character, is that he's like a vampire, but he's not totally a vampire. He can walk in the daytime without getting fried. Well, what about Aquaman? Is that what we're going to be seeing now? Because frankly, without that, like just like you alluded to, that's going to be difficult. Can't just be in the water the whole time. And then I was thinking about Marvel, and the character that best relates to Aquaman is Namor, the Submariner.
Who we
Yeah,
haven't even seen.
pardon me?
Who we have not even seen.
Yet, that's a yet. But my point is, even in the comic books, he was a daywalker. He just wasn't in the water all the time. He was on land a lot of time, doing stuff and being a part of the Avengers. And yet, Aquaman he's never been a daywalker, quote unquote, a land dweller of any kind. And I assume, even in the trailer, that you see that he's on land. If they're going to develop his abilities on land, because you know, even Marvel's similar character was more of a land dweller, or I should say, kind of 50-50, and he could fly.
The one thing about Namor is Namor has actually crossed the line between villain and hero. He has been both. During one of the comic strips, he actually goes from Earth to Earth to Earth, literally destroying the planet. So he could destroying that planet Earth, jumping to the next planet Earth, and destroying it, all of its people, all of its inhabitants, all of everything,
You know
in
what?
order to save his Earth. So he's doing a villainous act in order to save his people,
And
and he's been a villain.
here's the only thing about Namor. Namor doesn't care about. He only cares about two things.
Mm-hmm.
Because he's very self-serving and like a royal, and his people. That's it. He could care less. Is if what you're doing is going to either adversely affect and or positively affect his people and or him, then he's going to be involved. If it doesn't, he does not care. And that's the problem Avengers have always had with him. Is like, you know, we're going to go fight these people over in this plane. He goes, well, is that bothering you, Atlantis anyway? No. Is it bothering me? No. Then I'm not going. But if it says, yeah, they're going to pour all this oil and liquid into your ocean, then he's right there.
Mm-hmm.
So that's his issue. He has issues, which again plays to what you were saying about them being more like people than just heroes.
And in the comics, Aquaman has had issues just like that. But you already know it's not going to be placated on the screen as much as, like, say, a Namor character would be in the Marvel universe. One thing I feel like they could do with Aquaman, if they got Jason Momoa to do it, which he has been on Netflix TV shows. He has done things like that. Of course,
he's got a period piece one that's pretty good.
he was also on Game of Thrones, so he knows, he knows the ins and outs of doing, weekly TV show work and everything like that. If you could get him, if you somehow got a way to tie in the DC Legends of Tomorrow, the DC Supergirl, Green Arrow, Flash, if you somehow work that, if you could get him just as a representation of a true representation of his character in the direction you want to go, you can put him on the TV show. These TV shows are popular, and you're going to get more attention toward the movies that you're going to later be doing. So I feel like that's maybe one direction they can go. The problem with DC is they have so much work, and they're not helping themselves.
Okay, Steve, let's change this a little bit. I'm going to just show some pictures of what we're talking about here.
Okay.
This is the
Justice League America.
Justice League America. So you see Batman, Wonder Woman, and Green Lantern, Power Girl,
Black Canary,
the Green Arrow over there, uh, Hawkeye, the Hawkman, Cyborg, on and on and on. So this is a lot of the people that we see more readily in many of them. Okay, so let's go to another facet, and this is part of the Marvel universe. So you see a lot of characters in there. But one of the characters I wanted to show in here, which is very interesting to me, is the She-Hulk. I'm not as familiar with her comic book wise and what her origins are, but I just thought that was interesting. But more so, if you look toward the back there, where Professor um, uh,
Reed Richards.
Reed Richards, thank you, of Fantastic Four, and then of course he's got the Panther behind him. But notice the gentleman that's behind the Panther. This is a new TV series. I thought they were going to make this a movie, but they've decided to make it a TV series. Is the Inhumans, and that's Black Bolt there. We'll talk about that in a second. But looking over to the more toward the right there, we see Ben Grimm, and then in front of Ben is Namor, the Submariner, pictured there. Just a visual of what we were talking about is all. So what do you think
also, real quick, Greg. If you look in the lower, I believe, if on your screen it would be the left-hand corner, you see below Doctor Strange, you see a man with a hood and a girl. You can see her blonde hair and white.
Yep.
Cloak and Dagger. Cloak and Dagger. That is also possibly going to be a movie and/or TV series that they are going to work on.
Yeah, I think they've decided to make it a TV series also.
Right.
So yeah, yep. Looking forward to that one actually.
This is one of the ones that is truly based in tragic background and people overcoming that tragic background.
Right.
And tragic experiences. But okay, now continue.
Very much so. Just to give a visual of the universes we're talking about, just a slight visual of the different factions there. So what do you think about the Inhumans? Were you familiar with them reading those comic books early on? Because they had a really good run for a long time in my youth, and then there was like a hiatus of something, and it was a long one, like 15, 20 years before they re-established these characters, and now it's going to be a TV series.
I'm actually not that familiar with the Inhumans. I know a little bit of their origin. There is a gas of some kind that travels around the earth, and it affects the biology of certain human beings and turns them into basically Inhumans, where they develop their powers, their abilities. And on the moon is a civilization that has been there for eons, and Black Bolt is their king. And his power is, I feel, a very well developed ability for any character that they've ever come up with. And his power is his voice. He's learned how to communicate telepathically with people in order to in order to keep people from the hazard of his voice. Even a whisper from him has knocked the Hulk away. Like, has taken a man as strong as the Hulk and has literally pushed him away with just a whisper. And it's said his shout can almost, wreck entire cities in the blink of an eye.
Yeah, many have said he's actually the strongest hero in Marvel.
He's gone toe to toe with the Hulk. The introduction that I had with the Inhumans and on the moon was during the World War Hulk arc, which we're actually going to get a little bit of in Thor Ragnarok. We're going to get to see Hulk with his armor on, being a more volatile and angrier Hulk than what we've been used to seeing. But
Much more verbal Hulk.
yeah, and this is a point where the Hulk and Bruce Banner are more together. They've more come to an understanding that having Bruce Banner's brain and Bruce Banner's intellectual abilities and having the Hulk power and body gives them more range to be able to be more than just what Bruce Banner is or more than what the Hulk is. They have more of a complete understanding of each other and are becoming more like one sentient person instead of a divided house, so to speak. And but the Inhumans are strong. They have fought with and against the Avengers. They are like Namor. They are like Aquaman at Atlantis. They're very to themselves. They're very protective of their own. Does this affect me? No. Is this going to affect my people? No, not my problem.
Right.
And they're very cold during certain situations like that. Black Bolt is a part of the Marvel Universe's Illuminati, which is consistent of, you know, some of the smartest and most powerful superheroes in the Marvel Universe. Black Bolt, Doctor Strange, Reed Richards, Iron Man, Black Panther, and a couple others. And so he's looked on by all the Marvel Universe as a leader and as a great man and someone of vast intelligence, and you really want to be on the good side of him because he will take you apart if necessary. Okay, that bottom one's a pretty cool picture. I mean, it kind of reminds me of Avengers 2 when they're invading the fortress at the very beginning of the movie.
Yeah, good stuff. Good stuff. Yeah, I've got a few of these in here that I was able to come up with.
So, I really don't know much about the Inhumans. I feel like the show is going to do a great job for me as well as others. If you're not picking up the comic, or if you're very specific in the comics you pick up, this will give you insight into, you know, a different style of hero, a different style of a mutation. Because the Inhumans are actually believed to be the first mutants.
Right. Exactly.
So, and then of course they've had various run-ins with the X-Men, but not as many as you would think.
Very cool stuff.
Look at all that stuff. Look at all those characters that we'll never get.
Playtime. but look at all the ones that already have already.
Right. Well, I mean, just DC, they're doing a lot of work, but one thing I feel about DC that could change, I feel like, not counting the TV shows, but as much as the movies, I feel like they're expounding on the wrong characters. When you think about Marvel, all we've ever really gotten from Marvel is we've gotten the occasional animated TV series, animated movies, but they haven't really had as much momentum as gained as much acclaim as DC's animated TV shows, as DC's movies. And I feel like DC has always been so fresh in our mind before the Marvel Universe, before the TV series, that we've actually grown attached to side characters as much as we've grown attached to main characters. With Marvel, you really, unless you read the comics, you have beforehand, you've not known much about side characters. You didn't really know about Quicksilver, the Scarlet Witch, Hawkeye. You didn't really know about Power Girl. Wait, Power Girl's DC. You didn't really know about She-Hulk or the Vision.
Or the Black Knight back there.
Right. You know, yeah, especially not the Black Knight or Hercules.
Right.
But in DC, you've kind of gotten around to everybody in the animated shows, in the TV series, the Teen Titans, and I feel like they're not really paying attention to certain details that I feel like would go over better.
Mm-hmm.
So, but and then Marvel, because you haven't had as much attention, everything they do in the Marvel universe makes you want to go back. Oh, is that a thing? Is that a thing I missed? Have I not seen that before? So,
Yeah, and this is a good representation here.
well,
Uh,
this is Age of Ultron.
yeah, and what's cool about it is it just feels like this makes sense somehow. This
This few against many.
this conflict, this good against evil kind of thing. And despite how marvelously strong and able they are, they're still having a hard time. Except the Vision over there in the upper right, he seems to be doing pretty good. But everybody else is having, kind of have to really be in the mix a little bit there.
Well, here's the crazy thing about this. In this picture, you have actually three normal human beings in this fight.
Yeah.
Iron Man, who is a normal human being, but he's a super genius, which has created the armor, which gives him the advantage. Hawkeye, which is a human being, but his eyesight and his training and abilities have given him the ability to stand above what a normal person would be considered. And then Black Widow back there, who's literally got electric gauntlets, and that's about it. You know, mixed in with martial arts and Brazilian jiu-jitsu style
Yeah, very
moves.
girl. Yeah.
And so, like, we can everything Jeremy, I believe his name is Reiner,
Jeremy Renner.
the guy who plays Hawkeye.
Jeremy Renner.
Everything that he has done and everything that has been written for him has been so perfect to make him not a background character, but more of a forefront character.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like everything they've done and he's done has been very, very meticulously taken care of to not have him pushed to the back.
Right.
And you see in this movie where he's kind of uh, he becomes a subsequent leader for the team just a little bit. And it's when they go to his home in this movie and they see his family and they see his life, which of course Black Widow knows all about this. It kind of gives them a moment to reflect and calm down from their angst with each other, with the situation that's going on, and then they slowly start to pull together from there.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like he's honestly Captain America has probably been my favorite Marvel Cinematic Movie hero that they've worked with. I think he's easily my second favorite.
Okay. Let's talk about favorites. So you just did. So that's them.
Yeah.
So anybody coming into the Marvel universe now that they're trying to pay attention to, who's the next big thing? Is it the Panther?
No,
Who's
it
the
is the
next thing?
Punisher.
Ah,
That
now
right.
the Punisher is going to be a television series. So
He has also almost, but not quite, been confirmed as Marvel Cinematic Universe's War Machine,
hmm,
and that Rhodes, Don Cheadle, will actually be playing more the role of the Iron Patriot,
interesting.
which is the War Machine Iron Man armor, but it's more representation of like Captain America. It's more of an American representative, where Iron Man is a all around representative for the world.
Interesting.
Because Cheadle's character, because Rhodey, as Tony calls him in the movies, he is actually a military figure. He is a part of the Air Force.
Right. Mm-hmm.
The United States Air Force. So he actually has more obligation and more title to the United States versus the world. where this guy has no allegiances to anybody.
Right.
He is a character. Again, we love characters who struggle and who overcome. This is a guy, the Punisher, Frank Castle, whose tragic background of serving in the military. In one of the universes, he serves as the military uh, person. In another, he's a cop who has done nothing but his job in every way, shape, form, or fashion to help people and take down bad guys. His wife and his children, and certain ones are killed by terrible people. He's left for dead, and he does what a lot of people talk about what they would do. He is vengeance at first, but then he becomes something more. He becomes a ghost, a punishment for people that are doing wrongs in the world, and he is there to. He is judge, jury, and executioner. He is the be all end all, and he doesn't care if you're Captain America. He doesn't care if you're Iron Man. He doesn't care if you're Nick Fury. He doesn't care if you're the Hulk. He has had many, many, many clashes with Spider-Man and Daredevil because of things that they've done that haven't quite been as up and up in the comics. He's been there to punish them. And he floats on this line of anti-hero where he's not a villain, but he's not a hero at all. And
Basically, he's a vigilante, technically.
He's very vigilant. I mean, he's more vigilante than Batman ever thought he was.
Right.
And he's gained more popularity recently. I'm going to say from the late 90s on. They did a movie representation with what is his name?
Darth Lundgren?
Thomas Jane. No, they did a movie representation in the 80s with Dolph Lundgren. It wasn't that good.
Nope.
It was.
They did one with.
And then they did one with Thomas Jane, which I feel was a very, very close to the vest comic version of Frank Castle, and you got to see his character in development and him drifting down into the anti-hero he would become. And then we got Punisher Warzone, which was like, hey, let's see how many people we can kill in a movie.
Right.
And let's see how many different ways we can do it. It wasn't really a great representation of the character. It was a great representation of the violence of the character.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Of how far Frank Castle is willing to go to get the job done. And the job that he feels he has to do. Because nobody else is going to do it. These aren't people that deserve to go to prison and then get out in 2 years and go back to what they were doing. These are people that, in his mind, deserve the be-all, end-all punishment.
So what do you think, Steve? We've kind of gone the gambit of a lot of the different facets of the two universes here. We don't have enough time to just do it all. So
right.
I think we're going to have to revisit this, hopefully soon. But at
maybe when Defenders comes out, we can talk about it.
That's a good idea. I think that's a very good idea, and that will be pretty soon anyway. Mm-hmm. In fact, my wife and I were talking about Luke Cage today. But as I alluded to, we're not going to be able to do this all tonight. And then we're getting kind of long in the tooth, so I want to go ahead and just halt us now and call this part one. And we'll get back to the state of the comic book superhero again in the near future, and maybe even have more than just you and I on the panel to add a little bit more context and flair to it. But I want to say thank you for all your insight and information and all our opinions about what we think and how these things are going to come to pass, and hopefully it would be really good to see that they do come to pass as we envision them ourselves. But regardless of what happens, to see what the journey is going to be, and the continued journey of both universes. And I apologize, ladies and gentlemen, for my bias. I'm a Marvel guy, and again, Batman's one of my favorite DC characters, and there's a few others, but primarily I'm a Marvel guy. So I apologize for that bias up front. And we probably talked a little bit more Marvel than we did DC. So forgive us out there, you DC fans. We'll try to be a little bit more inclusive in our next representation of comic book superheroes and the state of those comic books in the movies, and get to elaborate even more so. So thanks a lot, everybody, for listening in and joining us today. Thanks, Steve, for all that you've provided and gave to us today on our broadcast. Check us out on YouTube, our YouTube channel, for other cool episodes talking about different movies that we are trying to suggest, and hope that you'll give them a chance. And the future reference to anything that we're going to be talking about in the near future, but definitely try to check out some of these comic book movies. Give us your opinion on what you think, and if you like them or not. And especially the DC Justice League that's coming out soon. Any other passing or parting words before we get out of here, Steve?
Go to your local comic book store, check out some of these series. They have graphic novels, they have omnibus, which give you a whole collective story in one book rather than just buying like 6 or 7 comics. They've got it all right there for you. Check out some of these characters, check out their backstory, and learn what you're getting into when you're going to watch Inhumans, when you're going to watch the Defenders, when you're going to watch the Justice League movie, and you can pick out all the differences that you don't like. The comics are the reason we're getting these movies. So if you enjoy these movies, go check out the comics. It's going to be a little different, but I promise you'll have fun.
I agree. Well, thanks everybody for listening in and watching us here on A Real Point of View. We appreciate your patronage and hope to see you here again next time. Until then, get out there, see a movie, get out there and enjoy yourselves. Have a good night, everybody. Take care, Steve.
Peace.